Alrighty. The wings make up the various lettered mega corporations that make up the city. They're needlessly powerful with singularities to match, each being known for specific technologies, at least on the outside. By far and large, the corporation, the wing that we've gotten the most bloody lore out of though, is HC Corp. I don't really think it's even close, maybe U or T Corp, but even then, the Kowloon Walled City equivalent received an entire canto and 2 intervalos to its name, as well as stranding the LCB there for a significant amount of time longer than any other location. This has, whether fortunately or unfortunately, resulted in plenty of identities originating from HC Corp, rather their main powerhouse, private army, the Heishous. Since Nocturnal Sweeping's Bokgak Intervalo is coming along, we're going to ask the question, was it all worth it? Is Heishou lore actually any good if you read over it? Well, the answer is a tad complicated. Nonetheless though, let's see what they have to offer. This is your disclaimer that, despite being a quarter Chinese, I cannot pronounce it to save my life, so things are going to be real painful. The Heishou packs are essentially a bunch of drugged up troops under the control of Hongyan's upper class. They're largely based off of the 12 Chinese zodiac and their namesake from the relevant earthly branches. The rabbits in this case are referred to as the Mao, as the snakes are referred to as the Si, pretty much taking their names one to one. Anyhow, how do you get your hands on these guys? Well, they're beholden specifically to the leash holder of said Heishou pack. The Heishou swear fealty to one lord at a time, colloquially notarized as the leash holder of said Heishou. The leashes seem to change hands quite frequently. Political intrigue, murder, and bestowing seem to be the most often cited reasons for leashes changing hands. Regardless of history though, absolute loyalty is given once you hold the leash. As for what the leash itself is, well, it doesn't seem to be a physical object more than a concept or authority that is passed around. They're rather vague about the exact compulsion that leads to such, but I suppose that's in the upbringing and creation of these fellas. Anyhow, you've gotten your hands on some Heishou of whatever branch tickles your fancy. What does it come with exactly? Well, there's rank and file alongside higher ranking members known as adepts. In addition, there's also Xianren who oversees their creation and maintenance. More on them later. Much like their name, essentially translating to black beasts, the Heishou uniform is composed of mostly dark shades of browns, blacks, and greys, with plenty of animalistic iconography related to their branch. It's a very boring uniform, if I had to say. Well, with some expected Chinese motifs. It's mostly the straw hat doing the heavy lifting. Lowest in ranks are the novices. These fellas are in training and haven't had their mutations just yet. There's some level of precaution required when administering boluses, as going too fast or too hard with them seems to cause quite a lot of instability and, well, usually fatality. The rank and file, on the other hand, seem rather expendable, well, questionably expendable. They're a force of drugged up individuals that abuse the powers of their branch's bolus to get the upper hand. What is a bolus, you might finally ask? For us, it would be medication, taken over a period of time in specific doses. For the Heishou though, it is their unique version of HC Corp's singularity, wherein they take transformation drugs to gain powers related to their branch's animal. These come in the form of many animalistic mutations, such as horns, wings, or even flexile morphing arms. It is said by Garion that the biological qualities of said transformations are borrowed from the beastmen of the outskirts. Notable members of the rank and file are limited to Sinner IDs, as pretty much all of the lower end Heishous we go up against are left unnamed. For the Sinner IDs though, we have Mao Roshu, Mao Otis, C. Gregor, C. Rodya, Yol Sinclair, and finally Wei Don. We'll brief over their respective fates later. Higher up from the rank and file are your adepts. These are essentially officers that report directly to the leash holder and are more often seen coordinating with them. For the most part, they are more distinguished individuals of far greater power and standing than the average rank and file. Some of them seem to take up personalizations as well, though we aren't privy to too many adepts. Notable ones are Wei of the Wu branch and Zilu of the Mao branch. In addition, we get the Sinner IDs for those two in Yisung and Faust, with one additional adept Sinner in Yo Heathcliff. While we don't have an exact measure of power for them, Wei and Zilu both sit at level 75 alongside Ezra. I know levels should be taken with a grain of salt since earlier uses for narrative reasoning wasn't there just yet, but since all three examples are from far more recent content, this isn't actually the worst comparison. Basically, adepts are bloody strong, and there's plenty of reason why the Heishou packs are so feared in this regard. As for the Heishou Xianren, these are essentially the creators of each branch of Heishou. Only they know the recipe for their respective branches and strictly control their numbers, making it very difficult to expand them past the private military force. They are very secretive about their recipes and don't disclose them to leash holders, not even the likes of the family hierarch. Not much else is known about them besides that. Let's move along to the various branches' traits and capabilities. Going by zodiac order, we first have the Z branch, the rats. They're mentioned in passing only, but are said to move in larger groups than even the rabbits. Makes sense, they're rats after all. Takes more after their actual counterparts rather than the zodiac race story wherein they intelligently ride atop the ox to victory. Anyhow, large groups is all we know about them. Next would first be the Chol branch, the oxes. Far as we know, they serve the family hierarch. There's a silhouette of them showcasing a large club. They act in Wei Don's uptight story as extra muscle essentially. They're very proud seeming, having quite the appetite and being very direct. Following them would be the Yin branch, tigers. This one is my zodiac and the Heishou pack related to them. There's pretty much nothing on them aside from a mention from Yo Sinclair in tigers being for tougher opponents. From that we can pretty much derive that they're for tackling more difficult problems. Problems that can't be solved by a bunch of berserking roosters. Mao naturally follows after in being the hares. These are the ones we have the most sinners of. They specialize in ambushes and pursuits, being deployed in fairly large numbers compared to others. Their mutations has their legs transform, specifically into digitigrade ones for massive increases in dexterity and raw speed. For the ambush force, well, they employ greatswords. In the case of the adept, 2 even. There's additional ties with HC Corp surprisingly, making use of glyphs for additional power as required. The one notable Mao we have is Zilu, an adept, being mirrored with Mao Faust. In addition, we also have Mao Otis and Mao Ryoshu as rank and file in Sinner identities. The Chen are next, those being dragons. Yeah, that's really all we have on them. The family hierarch holds their leash, one showing up during the family hierarch evaluation during Honger's revival alongside Ayo. The speculation is that they use orbs in some way or another. Moving along. C. This is finally another branch we have more on, these being the serpents. They're supposed to be assassins. The mutation lets them shoot their arms and limbs out like snakes, inflicting venom and assaults from unconventional angles. The assassin part seems a little overstated, considering the time we run into them during spring cultivation. We get a ridiculous swarm of them showing up compared to the one showing up in Nocturnal Sweeping. We have 2 notable ones in the form of IDs for Gregor and Rodya. Woo. Haunts. Okay, they're more often referred to as steeds. The mutation for this one is to basically turn into an armored centaur. They're line breakers, essentially shock cavalry, wielding a guandao to cleave through enemy lines. While such a concept is a little outdated even in trench warfare, having some form of cavalry or flankers is pretty cool. Notable members are just the adept Wei and his mirror in Yi Sang. The Wei branch are based on sheep, but they may as well be goats or rams instead. The mutation regards horns, both spurning from their heads and arms. An unfortunate side effect of their bolus regards a sensitivity to the cold, causing them to layer up to stay warm. Functionally, they're a siege unit to bash through walls or other obstructions, using their horns in a rather brute force and aggressive manner to accomplish such. The one notable member we get is a Sinner identity in the form of Wei Don, that of which being just a regular rank and file Heishou. The Shen branch are next, those being the monkeys. They're another one of those bound to the family hierarch. Little else is known about them. The silhouette points to some Sun Wukong looking ass with a staff, I guess. The prominent mutation seems to be a tail, I'd assume for balance or agility at that point. Then comes the Yo. This is our last one with significant amounts of content, though mostly in the form of 2 IDs instead. The roosters are essentially a berserker swarm force that throws their bodies against a target till it dies. Their weaponry is real funky, essentially igniting blood to burn through their enemies. The mutation on offer lets them sprout wings, though not so much for aerial capabilities as one would usually expect. Instead, they just fight with reckless abandon and pure violence. Left unchecked, they'll even start fighting one another out of sheer bloodlust. For a shadowy private military force as the Heishou, their employment is rather troublesome and thus left in the hands of the family hierarch. I suppose for a more public display of power, as required. We get 2 notable members in Sinner IDs. those being Heathcliff, an adept, and Sinclair, part of the rank and file. As for the Su and Hai, pretty much nothing is known about them, though we can expect them to be expanded upon in future with the Bokgaks, I suppose. Else, they may just be left out to dry and never see the light of day. What more is there to know about this private military force of HC Corp? Well, that's kinda it, as far as their structure and organization goes. They're just troops with some specialties between branches. They are exceedingly shallow as an organization, just given a lot of power otherwise thanks to their mutations. Thankfully, there's a little more interest garnered by individual uptie stories we received through the IDs and the plight of various notable members. Let's go over the ones we've got. Starting out, we've got Zilu. At first, they appear more or less as a cold, albeit loyal henchman, following orders to assassinate the sinners before being interrupted by Ricardo and the Middle, wherein she fends him off for a time before parting ways as the night in the back streets begins. Upon return, she argues about her terms of service before her temporary master is dealt with, upon which Jia Q is revealed to be her leash holder. Throughout Canto 8, she fights side by side with him, infamously with Cut Them Down Mao. Past there, she makes an appearance near the end of Canto 8 in regards to Lei Heng. Here, her affiliation with the Pinky is revealed, as she makes a deal with Lei Heng to ensure Wei lives. She activates Shin, tanks a blow from Lei Heng, and goes down. Living through all of this, she's ordered to stay and help with the new Hierarch and bus crew. From there, we go straight into Spring Cultivation, wherein she assists with the new Hierarch's training. We get a far more casual look at her here, but that more or less concludes her involvement for the time being. Next, we can look at Wei. Formerly a member of the Wu branch of Heishou's, he was freed from them at the cost of Shi Chun's leash over the branch. From there, his mutations were suppressed. Anyhow, as he is Shi Chun's eyed, he's inextricably tied to her story, popping up as soon as Canto 7 during the events of La Mancha Land. There they fight through the nightmarish swarm of blood fiends alongside his charge, both surviving through its events. During Nocturnal Sweeping, he once again plays the role of bodyguard. Same can mostly be said about Canto 8, though he's toppled by Lei Heng and largely put out of commission by the end. For Spring Cultivation, he acts as a pivotal figure in keeping Shi Chun's motivation, and eventually berserks in order to get her back when kidnapped. This unleashes his mutations, as he indiscriminately strikes down both friend and foe. The bus crew downs him, suppressing his mutations in the end. Due to the accumulated wounds, he is incapacitated for the time being. Last, he rocks up one more time with Shi Chun to finish off the intervalo, closing out his role for now. Okay, for each of the sinners, we'll fast forward their stories a decent bit. Very few of them have strong notes to work with, at least not alone, as they all contribute to an overarching plotline that works through Lord Hongers. As we're only looking at the Heishous themselves, and not their leash holders for the scope of this video, we'll be skipping over those. Mao Ryoushu's uptie story mostly goes over Heishou operations, even showcasing downtime and their behind-the-scenes dealings. Essentially, she ruminates on a while for her memories and allegiances before departing upon a mission. There's some complications wherein she runs into a familiar face, the former leash holder of the Maos. Loyalty is compelled out of Ryoushu by another hair on the same mission as they cut them down and give reminders of their role as efficient killing machines. This paints them as a mildly unstable but ultimately effective fighting force that prioritizes their current loyalties over any past ones no matter how close. In addition, it grants the air of mystique in showcasing their clandestine nature and how they would otherwise blend in with regular citizens of the city. Next comes Mao Otis. Hers is more Heishou on a mission. We get the spread of capabilities from one of the Mao branch, whether it be the weaponry or the extreme speed as she runs down an Anaworm thief. Here is where we get most mention of their mutations and the glyphs from Q Corp. It's all very routine stuff in showcasing what their hairs are indeed capable of. All this really does is show off their gear, capabilities, and well, competence. Otis is already a soldier of sorts, so there's nothing really to glean here. Just Otis being a good soldier. Very boring. Moving along. The Gregor's one comes after many casualties to the C branch from a full frontal assault. It goes over the mutation and induction ritual of utilizing the boluses from the branch's Xianren, there being a correct way and a definite wrong way of soaking in the mutations. He gives some pointers to the juniors before getting word of a mission in progress. Having an inkling of who may be on said mission, he departs to intercept, catching Rodya hesitating before a disposal target. We get a little on the snake's means of attack before he disposes of the target for Rodya, that being a young candidate. From there, we get crumbs regarding the conditioning process of Heishous, that there's multiple procedures undergone in their tenure. Gregor is on his 7th, Rodya is only on her 1st. This one is very Gregor coded. He's a lot calmer here, if anything, since he's more or less gotten a normal human arm in place of a bug arm. Perhaps too cold and calculated though, compared to how much more screaming there usually is in his other IDs. It shows a little more depth in the ranks of Heishous, there being some initiates as well, though we're not privy to them as much in comparison to the rank and file. See, Rodya is next. She gets a far more sympathetic story tied to her. Being only one procedure deep into her Heishou mutations, she isn't anywhere near as cold and calculated as Gregor shows himself off to be. This results in her crippling self-doubt and far too much speculation on the mission. While destroying an entire village, she hesitates a few times, most notably on a child candidate. She ruminates on letting them go, or at least giving the child the opportunity to resurrect with their head intact. Such an option is denied as Gregor shows up and finishes the job, crushing the child's head. There's another debate on loyalty and whatnot before a depressive episode from Rodya ends off the Uptai story. This one feels a lot more like a Rodya story than it does a Heishou one, but honestly, that's fine. Her characterization is always welcome for the most part. With these 4 out of the way, this is where I can pretty much say the Uptai stories fall into one of 2 categories. Either questioning what they're doing and the extent of their loyalty, or showing off just how cool and competent these Heishou and their abilities are. While there's slight in-betweens, the stories basically do not vary too far from this formula, and only drop a few crumbs here and there regarding ongoing events. Malforced is one of these in-betweens though, showcasing both the questioning of loyalty and her capability as an adept, as well as a member of the Pinky. It starts with her consulting the Gesellschafts before ruminating on her first meeting with Lord Hongers. Between clashing blows, he slowly convinces her to join his side, even revealing her Pinky title in the process. Anyhow, maddeningly enough, despite all the emphasis on Heishou loyalty, that of which should be heavily ingrained with the continuous mutations, he flips sides and joins him after much convincing. We get crumbs about Lord Honger's plans for Honggan, and well, otherwise just confirmations of her loyalty despite what she knows of Honger's intentions. As a reflection of Zilu, this more or less tracks, I suppose. I can't really say Zilu is that interesting a character, and well, it does show here unfortunately. Now, Wu Adept Yisung has a real funky one. More unique one, so to speak. In the end, it's a blend of the loyalty and skill showcase, but with a fair few more twists and turns. It's a long, introspective affair in where he recounts his service to Xianren Ishmael and failure to protect. The crushing guilt from such, and the inner conflict throwing him into turmoil when her killer rocks up to take him under their wing. Essentially, this is the way bad ending, wherein he couldn't protect Xianren. Definitely more unique as far as these Heishou Uptai stories go. Anyhow, it ends off with him going back to his Heishou roots, no longer taking suppression boluses, and herein allowing the mutations to return. Yo Sinclair. This one follows the events after Lord Hongers kills Xianren Ishmael, and follows the rooster going about quite a lot of violence. Here we also get the mental effects of boluses, alongside the far too tenacious, almost zombie-like fighting of the Yo branch. They are very much blood-crazed berserkers who, despite grievous wounds, keep on fighting. Anyhow, they are battle-drunk psychopaths that specialize in all-out combat. They're essentially a brute force implement to destroy anything and anyone in their path while fulfilling their lord's order. Since the leash has changed hands to Hongers at this point, this means quite a lot of violence, as it is ruminated that Hongers is particularly good at wielding the leashes in his control. Most of this one just talks on the battle-crazed nature of these roosters, but there isn't all too much depth to it in the end. Just murder hobos, and they sure as heck dress like a bunch of murder hobos. Then comes Wei Don. This one is kinda cute in showcasing Malforced and her interacting with one another. They're a lot more casual as they go through the motions of the sheep's disposition and the troublesome nature of their mutations. There is of course that question of loyalty, so we can check that off the box, and also mention of the oxes too, alongside a rooster. Past there, we get the demonstration of their capabilities as the sheep Heishou, slamming through a wall while Carmen talks on the wealth disparity and ego for whatever reason. This is pretty much Heishou Uptai story distilled down to a science. I would not be surprised if whatever final future Heishou stories we get are exactly like this one. Yo Adept Heathcliff. This one is unique in being a completely unnamed adept, not having a story equivalent but nonetheless being of high rank. Here we get inter-branch Heishou politics. Surprisingly, not talking about loyalty, but instead just orders. Besides that, Heathcliff and the Roosters go on a mission to take out some stragglers, resulting in him fighting off a distortion, though in his battle drunkenness, ends up turning on a bunch of roosters himself. Thankfully, it seems they have something of a medical budget to go through, so Sinclair and Heathcliff both just grab some survivors and head back. That about sums up the notable Heishous themselves. This video would double in length if we talked about their leash holders, since each of those are infinitely more interesting than the faceless rank and file that some of the sinners got. For a quick reference, these would have been Xia Qiu, Shi Yihua, Shi Chun, Xia Mu, and Xia Yan Chun, Lord Hongers, and likely a few others of little consequence. Each of these have far more interesting stories, however are not all inextricably tied down to their Heishou, nor do they make the Heishou their entire personality. For one wildcard though, it is worth mentioning that the bolus Xia Mu takes at the end of Canto 8 is called the Heishan bolus. This ends up being a smattering of different branches' capabilities. The namesake seems to be her claim to immortality among the elders, being translated quite plainly to Black Immortal Bolus. Showcased capabilities are from the Wei, Yo, Si, and Yin branches, supposedly. Being able to mix and meld the capabilities are quite strong, but otherwise exceedingly inhuman. Ultimately, her capabilities using such aren't enough to fend off the sinners, eventually being washed away by Honger's ego. That about sums up what we know of the Heishou, a somewhat ambitious attempt at a clandestine organization spanning quite the variety of different animal motifs and mutations. They're designed to be specialists within the ever-shifting environment of Hongyuan, feared by all within. As bioengineered soldiers merging beasts from the outskirts and sophisticated bolus technology, they're a formidable force for any wing to wield, especially with adepts being as competent as they seem. However, for my personal evaluation of the Heishou lore, it's a shallow pond but a very wide one. They try to cover too many bases at once, with far too many real-life references needing to do the heavy lifting for theming. There's apparent confusion between the Korean zodiac and Chinese one to boot, alongside the far too surface-level imitation of the animalistic elements. To me, you could move the Heishou into any mildly Chinese setting, and they wouldn't be out of place. Literally a bunch of zodiac warriors that check boxes in regards to their abilities isn't exactly the most thrilling, so to speak, and having the vast majority of our dealings with them being with nameless and faceless goons is honestly quite insulting. While the initial concept may seem cool, and shrouding them in some degree of mystery makes them seem more deep than they otherwise are, someone who knows the zodiac well enough and knows just how surface level everything about the Heishou is, one can't help but feel that they're a complete and total miss. The curtains were pulled back too much, revealing how bare bones they really are. They lack that Project Moon source that many of the other factions within the setting have. This is where I have to more so agree with Esku's take on them. The potential is there for expansion and depth, but man, as they stand, they're bloody shallow. Having an entire season of these faceless mooks shoved down our throats only served to turbo up the Heishou fatigue, and well, I hope they've learnt their lesson. At the very least, with the new season in Canto 9, we've gotten a far more diverse set of IDs to play with. Alas, it's done, and well, I doubt we'll be getting all too much more of them once both Nocturnal Sweeping and Spring Cultivation's Bokkak are done. If you enjoyed the video and my ramblings, give it a like, and if you'd like to see more, well, the subscribe button is below. Thanks once again to my two patrons, Ardy and Derp, but also thanks to Gano for the recent donation to the Ko-Fi. For support via those two platforms, look below in the description. Anyhow, thank you once again for tuning in, or using me as second monitor content. Appreciate it.